The Rams lose another thriller to the Lions, this time in overtime fashion, but you should feel better about the Rams' Super Bowl chances today than you felt yesterday. We've got big Week 1 takeaways and the latest on Puka Nacua. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, join the party. Just past 14,000 subscribers, all thanks to you. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. Now the Rams 4 Locked On. As always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just started his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we've got our big takeaways from the Rams' Week 1 loss to the Lions. That's coming up next. But first, today's episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase Locked On to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, Travis, we have so much to get into. The Rams lose again, another thriller to the Lions, 26-20 in overtime, a game that you lose a lot of your offensive linemen. I mean, you're coming into the game, you're down your starting right tackle, Rob Havenstein. During the game, you lose your backup left tackle and Joe Noteboom. You're down to your backup's backup and A.J.R. Curry having to deal with Aiden Hutchinson. You lose Steve Avila during the game. You got a rookie playing at center at Bo Limmer after they shuffle things around, moving Jonah Jackson. You lose Puka Nacua, and still you took a team that a lot of experts are predicting could not only represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, but they're the sexy pick to win the Super Bowl, and you outplayed them for long stretches. Your defense shuts them down the second half, allowing just 3 points, and you still had a chance to win this game. So I hate moral victories. I am not the moral victory guy. Today I feel like I'm going to be one.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially in pro sports. You either win or you lose. That's kind of the way that it goes. And the Rams lost, and quite frankly, it's a game they should have won. All of the injuries that you just laid out obviously presented a great deal of a challenge for the Rams. And despite all of that, like you said, you're playing with your third string left tackle. You're playing with a left guard that was supposed to be your left guard, that was your center, that was back to your left guard. You're playing with your third string center. You're playing with your second string right tackle. They still should have won the game. They lost the game because of a couple of crucial mistakes along the way. I think that Kyren Williams running out of bounds at the end of the game, huge mistake. Sean McVay electing to try to go for it on 4th and 4 from the 23-yard line early in the game in a situation that didn't make any sense to me was a big mistake. A.J.R. Curry picking up a holding penalty on a play that negated a touchdown, taking a 1st and goal from the 1 and turning that into 3 points was a huge mistake. The Rams left a lot of things out there. That's the downside. The good side is a whole bunch of stuff went wrong. They still look pretty good. They still look like a team that's going to move the ball. They look like a team that has one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Cooper Kupp popped in a way that we haven't seen him pop in a very long time. So there's a lot of things to be very positive about. But at the end of the day, D-Mac, I still feel like that's an opportunity that the Rams let slip through their fingers to beat a really good team on the road in their own building. And they just missed it because they couldn't get the little things right.
They're very close, and absolutely, you have to have better situational awareness there if you're Kyren Williams. A.J.R. Curry, that's a tough play. It goes, you're going against Aiden Hutchinson in that situation, but that looked like it was going to be a touchdown for Jordan Whittington, and the Rams were in a good shape to win this game. But really what it came down to as well was earlier in the game, in the red zone. I mean, we saw in the playoff game and the wild card game last year, this year actually, but early in the year, they go 0 for 3 in the red zone. This one, they go 2 for 5. So you had missed opportunities in the red zone. On the drive earlier in the game, it was 4th and 4 from the 23-yard line. Didn't love that. Didn't love that call to go for it there in the red zone. And then the last drive before the half, Matthew Stafford throws a pick on 2nd down from the Lions' 8-yard line. So between the failed 4th down call, Stafford's interception, our Curry's penalty, the Rams left 10 points on the board. You need to capitalize on those opportunities. It's definitely a theme that has continued on into this season early, and it's something that needs to be reversed.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how you want to look at this. This had some major 2022 vibes going on early, where offensive linemen start to drop like flies. You're like, oh boy, look out. This felt like the game was kind of hanging in the balance. Like the Rams not only are going to lose this game, but it feels like they might get run over. It was 17-3 at one point, and you're thinking, this is not a good position to be in. And they calmed it down. They played really well. Their defense, I thought, really showed up most of the night. They were out of gas by the time you got to overtime. But all in all, I thought a very good defensive effort. It's the little things that they messed up on. And, little things become big things. Like we talked about the Kyren Williams. You mentioned the interception that Matthew Stafford threw towards the end of the first half. Instead of getting something, you get nothing. Another trip inside the red zone where you get a big fat nothing. They ran the ball reasonably well. They committed to the run, except for when they didn't, and it felt like they needed to do it. So, look, I think at the end of the day, this is a game that you look at this team against another, like I mentioned, very good team in Detroit. The Rams look like a playoff team. Now, they got to get healthy. They got to get much healthier up front. You got to cross your fingers, toes, and everything else you got that Matthew Stafford stays upright, because that dude can still make some magic happen. But if the Rams can get healthier on the offensive line, despite a tough loss last night, you feel pretty good about where they are. This is the scheduled loss, right? That opening night, Detroit against a really good team, and the Rams had a chance to win it. It's disappointing. It's not necessarily surprising, but I'm assuming health, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but assuming they're healthy moving forward, I think the Rams are going to be a pretty good team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's hard to not take that away from this game. I mean, yes, you can look at it's week 1, the 4th preseason game, week 1 lies, but still, if you can guarantee me a semi-healthy offensive line, I'm very confident this offense will score a ton of points, especially with that version of Cooper Kupp and DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson and Colby Parkinson made some big plays as well. I like where this offense is. I think Chris Shula made such a massive statement saying he could be that guy. He could be that guy. And I think that's definitely something we're going to get into as well. But before we get to the second segment, we got an update too on Puka Nacua. We'll talk about that. The overtime rules in the NFL are awful. They're terrible. They're one of the worst in sports. Let's just be honest. You have Matthew Stafford, who's manipulating the pocket like a wizard. He's making throws that only a handful of quarterbacks that have ever walked this planet can make on Sunday Night Football against his former team, and he doesn't get to touch the football in overtime. Just look at Dan Campbell's face after they won the toss. They knew this game was over. And, of course, you had Dave Montgomery, who turned into prime Marshawn Lynch there in overtime. 5 carries for 45 yards and the walk-off touchdown because the defense was out of gas. So, Roger Goodell, NFL Rules Committee, if you're watching this show, I know you are, please consider changing the overtime rules.
Yeah, they're not great, but I have a hard time getting too worked up about it when they just take the ball and they just ram it down your throat for 70 yards. That had this been a old school way that we did it, where they moved it 30 yards, kicked a long field goal, and the game ends. It's like that feels a little chintzy. But this was that tip. And again, nobody's fault, really. The Rams are out of gas. They just didn't have anything left. I would like to see Matthew Stafford get the ball, but they got absolutely trucked in that overtime period. And you got to make some play on defense. You got to do something to offer some resistance, and they were just unable to do it. It's a drag. It's something that, maybe this will determine a home game or not. You got to go back on the road, but this is a game that I think you can pull a lot of positives out, but ultimately, like we talked about at the jump, D-Mac, in the NFL and pro sports, you either win or you lost, and the Rams lost a game they probably should have won.
They absolutely did, but there were some positives, and we're going to get into those next on Locked On Rams.
All right, let's talk about Prize Picks, right? Pick more, pick less. It is that easy with Prize Picks. All you have to do is pick between 2 and 6 players, look at the stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. And Prize Picks, they're giving you one right now. Caleb Williams, 1 yard passing on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. That's 4 weeks of free W's. So don't miss this deal on Prize Picks, because when September ends, it is gone. And right now, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can look at tonight's game, right? You got a little Monday Night Football going on right now. Brock Purdy, 235.5, more or less. Aaron Rodgers, 246.5, more or less. That's how easy it is. But you got to put the Prize Picks app on your phone, and you got to put in that code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL. And when you do that, you get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And this episode of Locked On Rams is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that you'd like to learn, to get a little better at, to kind of just explore a little bit? As an adult, let me ask you this. Do you make time to learn new things as often as you like? Or is that something that you haven't done since you were a little kid, right? Kids are always learning and growing, but as we get a little older, sometimes we lose that curiosity. Therapy, though, can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, this is a great time to do it, and a great time to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, designed to be flexible, and of course, it's designed to be suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON, BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and join that Locked On Rams Everyday Listeners Club. That means either watch or listen to an episode every day, 5 days a week, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. All right, Travis. In our second segment, we're going to talk about the injuries, but let's talk about some of the biggest positives from this one. I think right at the top, you got to talk about Cooper Kupp. The Cooper Kupp Revenge Tour is underway. It is the closest we've seen to 2021 Triple Crown Super Cup in a long, long time. 14 catches for 110 yards. The touchdown had the beautiful catch in the fourth quarter down the left sideline, dragging both of his feet in.
Unreal.
And I think for me, it was just how they used Cooper Kupp in this one. Next Gen, they dropped some stats after the game, and they tweeted this out. Cooper Kupp had 42 snaps and 12 touches in motion in week 1, the most by any player in a game over the last 7 seasons. Kupp was in motion at the snap on 30 plays, 6 more than any player in a game over that span. And he traveled 436 yards in pre-snap motion, the second most in a game by any player since 2018. So there was clearly a concerted effort to get Kupp back to where he was. And when Puka Nacua left the game, he was eaten. And it was a great sight to see for Rams fans.
Yeah, I think you bring up the 2 most important things. Number 1, he looked like Cooper Kupp all over again. That's really exciting. We had not really seen a whole lot of that over the last couple of years, so he looked terrific. That's number 1. Number 2 is, was this because Puka was unavailable? Was this because all of a sudden Matthew Stafford went back to what he knows best, the guy that he trusts the most? Or is it both of those things together at the same time? I tend to think that it's probably the third option, that all of those things coming together, because what that reminded me a lot of, D-Mac, especially in the second half, was the fourth quarter in the Super Bowl when they beat the Bengals, which was basically, we're just going to throw it to him every time. You do whatever it is you need to do. We're going to try to do what we're going to do, we're going to throw it to him, and it worked. And everybody inside of Ford Field knew it was going to Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford knew it. Kupp knew it. The Lions defenders knew it. And they still really didn't have an answer for it. And then when you needed a big play from a Tyler Johnson or from a Demarcus Robinson, they were able to kind of step in and fill that void as well. So hopefully, and, knocking on wood right here, that Puka comes back and can be as effective as he can be. But you get both of those guys cranked up. It was terrific to see Cooper Kupp look like Cooper Kupp for the first time in a while. He was just an A+ last night.
Yeah, and absolutely that's true. I mean, with Puka Nacua out, he was getting most of the targets.
Yep.
I mean, 49 pass attempts from Stafford, 29 of those targets were to Cooper Kupp. And I think the thing, though, it was that it wasn't just the short intermediate routes, which definitely that was the go-to. You did see some longer ones. I mean, the toe tap one was 20 yards. And I think you see a couple rushers in there, too, where he was using that capacity as well. And really the big takeaway is that if you do have to lose Puka Nacua for a couple of weeks, if he goes on the IR, whatever the case may be, that version of Cooper Kupp can carry a big-time workload. And if it's just for 4 weeks until he gets back, then that's totally okay. And with the flashes we saw from Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, it definitely doesn't seem like, okay, the season's over if Puka has to miss any time.
No, they have some depth at that position that feels meaningful, right? Tyler Johnson looked really good. We saw Kobe Parkinson catch some passes and be a part of what they did offensively as well. You mentioned Whittington had a moment that it felt like he was going to get his first touchdown. Obviously, it got called back because of that penalty. Really, the only one who didn't contribute at all is Tutu Atwell. Again, why is he on this team? I'd very much like an explanation as to what role he fills here, because I just don't see it at all. But they can survive for a while without Puka. They're going to need Puka back if they're going to go where we'd all like to see them go. But Puka's this injury is a big deal because, again, he was hurt throughout camp. We were told he would be ready to go, and he made it a half before he was down again. And it is very, very concerning that you couldn't even get through the first half of the first game without him going down.
Also, too, hey, welcome to the NFL, Mr. Terrion Arnold of the Detroit Lions, going up against Cooper Kupp and leading to 2 pass interference calls in the end zone that puts them right up towards the goal line. So, yeah, I mean, that was great to see. The way he was moving, the way his body looked, it's just about health for Cooper Kupp. So the people out there saying Kupp was washed, hey, you guys try to write him off, he's not writing back. I'll tell you that much. Now, let's talk about Puka Nacua real quick, though, as far as the injury update, because nothing that substantial yet. They're doing testing today, but Rappaport tweet out, he's going to have tests this afternoon just to determine what is going on there in his knee. No firm word yet on his status, but obviously same knee as training camp, clearly in some pain that he was battling through. Wouldn't be surprised if he misses some time as he figures out and tries to improve this issue. So my takeaway on this is, well, one, that it's the same knee. It's the same knee. We know Puka has dealt with injuries throughout his career. That's one of the reasons why he was the 4th pick for the Rams in the 5th round and why he dropped that far. But hopefully this is nothing serious. It didn't appear to be. He was on the card. He also did return for at least a play after he initially injured that knee as well. But we know they're going to proceed with caution when it comes to an injury to one of their premier players.
I want to go back, and I'm sorry that I was right about this, but this is why every time somebody says, "Oh, he's fine, he's just not practicing," they're not fine, or they would be practicing. Rob Havenstein, oh, it's fine, we're just going to take a little time. He didn't play either. If guys don't practice, it matters. No matter what they say, no matter how often, oh, it's not that big of a deal, because you saw this happen in a half where all of a sudden one of your most important guys in Nacua is down again. The way that he plays so physically. He's such a tough football player. He's not a guy that's running out of bounds. He's fighting for extra yardage. He's going to take some hits. He's going to take some licks. This is just kind of the guy that he's going to be in this league, I think, unfortunately. The question you keep coming back to is, how much time could he miss? How much time will he miss? And when he comes back, is he at his best, or is he a lesser version then? We'll see. But this lasted a half. This goes back to, this wasn't just a big hit or he got tackled. It's like, okay, that could happen. This has been something that's been lingering throughout camp. There's a reason he wasn't a participant in a good chunk of this, and it flared up right away. You can kind of bat it aside and say, we'll see what it is, but this has been an issue before the season even started, and it's something that should have Rams fans full attention, for sure.
Yeah, and if you look at the play, he left the game in the second quarter after the injury, just kind of banged his knee there on the
Yeah.
turf. It wasn't like there was any video of a big turn or a pop
No.
or anything like that. So I know Puka Nacua fantasy owners were falling to their knees and their heart was sinking watching this one. But yeah, as you point out, I mean, he injured this knee in the Rams joint practice with the Chargers earlier this summer, but it does look like he's not fully recovered from it. I think when you look at this team's goals, look, they know what a successful season is for them. And it's not winning 9 or 10 games like last season and being an overachieving team. It's winning a playoff game, make it to the NFC Championship and being kind of one of the second-tier teams to possibly make it to the Super Bowl, right? We know that this team has those lofty goals and expectations for themselves. So I think considering that, you have to do what's right for Puka Nacua and try to make sure that when he comes back, he stays back. And look, I think that one thing that's great about this team as far as receivers go and everyone really related is the next man up mentality we saw in this game. And one of the big standouts to me, Tyler Johnson, one of the biggest plays of the night. If the Rams won, we'll be talking all about Tyler Johnson's 63-yard catch and run, filling in for Puka Nacua. He also finished the game with 7 targets, made 5 catches, and had 79 yards receiving. So really like what I saw from Tyler Johnson. I think, like we said before, if you get this version of Cooper Kupp, I'm confident in DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. So number one priority is don't rush Puka back, get him 100% healthy, and this Rams offense is going to be just fine.
Yeah, look, you'd miss Puka a lot. He's a terrific player, and you want to get him back as quickly and as healthy as possible. But I agree with you, D-Mac. This is a position that at least I think you can keep your head above water for a period of time without him. The offensive line, I think, is a much different story because you've had so many guys drop so quickly. I know that we can talk about that coming up in just a little bit, but the Nacua injury is a big deal. I'm not trying to minimize it, but I think they have options beyond Puka that can at least keep them in some games along the way. The offensive line could be a very different story.
No doubt about it. We got more takeaways. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
All right, so this is a great example of why Game Time needs to be on your phone, the Game Time app, right? Because the prices for games go down the closer you get to it, especially when we're talking about some baseball games. The hottest game ever in the history of Dodger Stadium yesterday. Did you flip on that Game Time app? There were some pretty great prices available to you as well. But if you don't have the app on your phone, how are you ever going to find out, right? They have all the views from the seats, great deals, of course. But the thing that I like the most about it is you toggle on that all-in pricing feature, and you don't get hit with that, wait, what moment at the end, right? That, wait, I thought we were talking about a $20 ticket. Why does this cost me $47? Toggle that on upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. You know how to do it. You download the Game Time app. You create an account, and you use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off. Rams coming home in a couple of weeks. You got all sorts of baseball coming up, playoff baseball coming up, hockey, basketball right around the corner. So download that Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, so we have a lot more to break down. We will definitely do that on tomorrow's episode. But for this last segment, I really think you got to shine a light on this Rams defense and their performance against a high-powered Lions offense. It was Chris Shula's debut as the Rams defensive coordinator. You're playing without Aaron Donald, who's at home sleeping during the game. I don't know if you saw that. AD taking a little nap there. And this Rams defense, they gave this team a chance to win. That was a great showing for Chris Shula.
Terrific. I think if there are 3 really main highlights coming out of this game. Number 1, Cooper Kupp looks like Cooper Kupp again. Number 2, Matthew Stafford can still do some unbelievable stuff, but close in that top 3, I agree with you. Chris Shula's defense really showed up. They gave up 20 points in regulation. against a really good team. How many times did you hear Amon-Ra St. Brown's name mentioned last night? Not very often. What about Laporta? Not very often. They had a little trouble at the end there. I think it was more fatigue than anything else with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs along the way. Jared Verse looked pretty good. There was just a lot of really high-quality defense being played, very physical, hitting fast. It just looked like a defense that's really going to hold up, assuming health. I could not have been more impressed with week one and that Rams defense.
Absolutely. I mean, they allowed just 20 points and 293 yards, just 16 first downs to that Lions offense through fourth quarters. You look at the Rams offense, they had 387 yards and 26 first downs in regulation. Yes, they did wear down overtime, but I think you have to point out, too, that's coming off a 2-minute drill. They were just on the field, and they were absolutely gassed. You had a lot of rookies that haven't got a lot of game action during preseason. Braden Fisk and Jared Verse. Jared Verse gets his first sack. Byron Young gets a sack. I mean, Kobe Turner, he was really, really good as well. We'll talk about the defense a little more in depth tomorrow, but the bottom line is this defense looks like they're going to be a strength for this team, and it's in week one. And I think, too, you want to give some credit, too, that Troy Reeder and Christian Roseboom, I mean, holding up in the secondary. I mean, you had those two massive plays by Jameson Williams, and Jameson Williams he's a trouble for a lot of defenses out there. But I think for the most part, Reeder and Roseboom, I mean, no one was saying, where's Ernest Jones last night? No one was tweeting that out, right? And this defense is going to be just fine without Ernest Jones.
No, they did exactly what you were hoping. That Rams defense, and I don't mean this as anything other than a compliment, it was good enough. It was good enough. There was nothing you're looking like, they're going to have to score 35 points a game to win games. That's not true. Their defense was good enough. It'll get better. You're going to get players back. You're going to get a player like Darius Williams back. That defense will continue to improve along the way. I am incredibly bullish. They were able to get pressure on Jared Goff. They were able to get a big takeaway when they needed. John Johnson with a big interception there in the second half. That I could not have been more pleased with what I saw on the defensive side of the ball. The Rams did not lose that game because the defense was not up to snuff. The Rams lost that game because of a couple of bad decisions, a couple of tough penalties at the wrong time, and an inability to score touchdowns in the red zone. Not the defense.
No doubt about it. I mean, that was one of the big momentum shifting plays that would have been talking about in the first segment today was John Johnson III's interception. Yep. I mean, they were trailing 13-17 at that point, and you have Johnson in there, and he's making big plays, and he's colliding, and looked like maybe the ball touched the ground. They review the play, the interception stands, and I think John Johnson is one of those guys who, look, it doesn't matter where he is on the depth chart to start the season, but he's going to find a way to get on the field and make plays. Some players just do that. He's certainly one of those guys. You have the intangible benefits. You lose out on Ernest Jones' leadership. John Johnson is a guy that can provide that as well. So I like seeing him on the field. But really, at the end of the day, this is one of the strangest feelings I've had after a Rams loss, where it's such like an emotional high. It's the first game back. You have a lot to feel good about. And then you add the injuries and the moral victories and everything that kind of comes along with it. I think it boils down to the fact that if this team's healthy, and that's a big if in capital letters, this team is a legitimate contender in the NFC. We talked about the injuries during the game, but you're still without your starting cornerback in Darius Williams. You still have a defense that lacks a lot of experience. This team, when healthy, can compete with anyone in the NFC, and that's the number one thing you want to see in week one. This
is a tough loss, but all in all, a pretty positive first step for this team. It's always disappointing to kind of wrap your head around an L and try to find the silver linings, but there were a lot of them. The biggest thing moving forward is, what does the injury report look like? Who is down and for how long, and what do you do? And in particular, up front, that if Dotson is down, if Avila is down for an extended period of time, we already know that Alaric Jackson is going to be gone at least next week. A.J. Arcuri has a long way to go. If he's going to be your left tackle for a while, he needs to get a lot better very quickly. But generally speaking, a very positive night for the Rams, a very good night. Stafford looked great. Cooper Kupp looked great. The defense looked great. Josh Carty made his kicks. There was, some procedural stuff. I thought Sean McVay made a couple of weird decisions. I thought Kyron Williams staying in was a big mistake. That stuff will get ironed out. That stuff will get better. And I'm very optimistic about where this team is, assuming health on the offensive line. You can't say that enough. If the offensive line doesn't get healthier, That's a totally different question. But for one night at least, I think you can feel pretty good about what the Rams did.
Yeah, all this is encouraging if they get healthy. I mean, you had the patchwork offensive line. You lose your leading receiver from a year ago. You're still without your starting cornerback, and you took a team that could go to the Super Bowl, and you take them to overtime, you still lose. But it all comes down to that. I do think that it's going to be interesting to see if the Rams are active on the market to bring in another left tackle. You bring up A.J.R. Curry. I saw him getting roasted. My man's a practice squad player. Right? My man is a practice squad player trying to contain Aiden Hutchinson.
I was going to say, he's a practice squad player trying to deal with one of the most fierce pass rushers in the entire league. And I'm not saying this to pick on anybody, to throw shade. He was overmatched. They're on different levels as far as skill level in the NFL. He was doing the best he could, but all pro left tackles are going to have trouble with that guy. This is a guy that's played 8 NFL games until yesterday. And that was a lot to ask of him, and he wasn't up for it yesterday, and we'll see whether or not he's up for it moving forward.
Absolutely. And tomorrow's episode, we're going to throw out some names, guys they could consider if they need to add some offensive linemen. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house is Locked On Rams house?